Have you ever stopped to think how a single moment can flip the destiny of an empire upside down? That's right. There are battles that aren't won just with a sword in hand, but with courage, cunning, and a keen sense of the terrain. The Battle of Issus was exactly that. The day when a young Macedonian king, Alexander, faced down the colossus of the Persian Empire and declared, not with words, but with actions, "Today you fall." And the strangest part? He didn't have the biggest army. He didn't have the best resources, but he had something Darius III lacked: strategic vision and a steady hand. Instead of running from the confrontation, Alexander advanced. Instead of being intimidated by the numbers, he ignored them. And the result? A shock so powerful that it resonated through the centuries. Issus wasn't just a military victory, it was a clear message. The world was changing hands. While the Persian Empire banked on fear and sheer numbers, Alexander relied on precision, calculation, and an exact reading of the moment. And that's the secret few tell. Most people think that great empires fall slowly, from old age. But sometimes it all starts with a retreat, and in this case with Darius turning his back at the worst possible moment. If you think history is made up solely of dates and names that are hard to pronounce, get ready, because this is a lesson in power, boldness, and turnaround. It's about turning disadvantage into victory, and more than that, about earning respect even from your enemies. Issus was a turning point, and anyone who understands what happened there knows how Alexander became a legend. So buckle up, because the journey is about to begin. And by the time you finish watching this video, you'll understand why this battle still fascinates strategists, historians, and anyone who's ever had to face a giant. They say that certain battles are inevitable, and with Alexander, it was never just tavern talk. After humiliating the Persians at the Granicus River, the young king wasn't interested in resting. He set off, thirsting for conquest, straight toward the heart of the Persian Empire, as if he already knew his legend was being forged. Meanwhile, Darius, sovereign of a colossal empire, finally woke up. He decided it was time to face that Macedonian kid who dared challenge centuries of Persian rule. The stage was set, but check out the irony of fate. Darius, used to sending generals to solve his problems, now had to get his hands dirty. He mobilized an enormous army, the kind that makes the ground shake, thinking that the sheer weight of numbers would be enough to crush Alexander. Little did he know that the problem wasn't the enemy army, it was Alexander himself. The guy wasn't coming only with spears and shields. He came with something the Persians didn't expect, a mind as sharp as a blade. As they marched toward the inevitable encounter, the tension grew. It was more than a mere territorial dispute. It was a collision of worlds. The young king who wanted to conquer everything he touched versus the emperor who embodied the old order. And in the middle of it all, the cities of Cilicia watched tensely, feeling that something epic was about to unfold. It wasn't just a war, it was the war. And the name Issus would soon carry the weight of eternity. Alexander, for his part, wasn't in the least intimidated by the grandeur of the Persian Empire. In fact, it was as if he fed off the audacity. Unlike Darius, he marched with a smaller, more agile force, but trained as an extension of his own thought. That was his advantage. Where others saw numbers, he saw opportunities. Where others saw danger, he saw glory. And so, with the sun blazing down on his back and his eyes fixed on the horizon, destiny began to sketch the Battle of Issus. Now, hold onto this. While Darius was trying to encircle Alexander and cut off his supplies, something unexpected happened on the ground. And that seemingly trivial detail was what turned the tide. Now brace yourself for this twist. Darius, the almighty of the Persian Empire, thought he had a masterstroke on his hands. The idea was simple, at least on paper: cut off Alexander's supply routes, force him to retreat, leave him hungry and disorganized. a smart, strategic plan. But then came what no general wants to hear. The terrain didn't cooperate. And when the land decides to defy an empire, my friend, no number can fix it. Instead of trapping Alexander, Darius forced his gigantic army into an invisible trap, a narrow strip of land squeezed between mountains and the sea, where men could hardly move in formation. It was like trying to fit an ocean of soldiers into a funnel. The result? A teeming mass of people with no room to maneuver, to retreat, or even to breathe. And there, in that constriction, the numbers became dead weight. When Alexander noticed the Persians' position, he must have had that knowing little smile. It was as if Darius had brought the banquet right to his table. What was meant to be a siege turned into a gift. In practice, that mistake transformed the Battle of Issus into an almost even contest, and that was all Alexander needed. He didn't have to beat a colossus, he only had to level the playing field. And Darius unwittingly did that for him. How curious. While the Persian Empire trusted in quantity, Alexander always bet on quality. And there, in that treacherous geography, it was as if the land had chosen a side. The Persian cavalry choked, and unable to move as it should, the infantry lines tripping over one another. What was meant to be an advantage turned into a muddle. And in that scenario, whoever had clarity and command came out on top. And who do you think was in full control? That's right, Alexander himself. He already saw a golden opportunity to deliver a direct blow, but before that, he needed to orchestrate his move with precision. Because, my friend, the difference between chaos and glory lies in the details of strategy. Imagine this. On one side, a compact, razor-sharp army that exudes discipline and strategy. On the other, a sea of soldiers, shields, spears, and horses where sheer size was intimidating. That's what Alexander faced at Issus, roughly 40,000 against over 100,000 Persian soldiers. A scenario that for many would be reason enough to give up, but for Alexander, it was just another Tuesday on the battlefield. The truth is that big numbers only impress from afar. Alexander knew his army like a maestro knows his orchestra. Every soldier was trained to think, react, and fight as if they were part of a single body. Meanwhile, Darius, with his Persian horde, faced a classic problem. Too many people, too little coordination. And in a cramped space, that turns into a logistical nightmare. The irony is that Darius's own advantage turned against him. The narrow plain of Issus left no room for large formations, wide flanks, or swift maneuvers. It was like trying to dance a ballet in armor inside a narrow hallway. The result? A gigantic army, squeezed, confused, and vulnerable. Alexander, ever the strategist, knew how to take advantage of that with near-surgical precision. From an aerial view, one might have thought Alexander was at a disadvantage. But it wasn't just about numbers, it was about what you do with them. And what Alexander did was art. He saw gaps where others only saw walls. He saw rhythm where others only saw chaos. And so even with fewer men, he had more control. And in that situation, control was worth more than gold. And it was precisely this mastery of the field, this almost supernatural reading of the situation, that set the stage for his next masterstroke. Because when the order was given and the spears were pointed forward, Alexander didn't hesitate. He was going to attack. But not just any attack. This is where things shift from war to masterpiece. Alexander wasn't just a warrior, he was a strategist who saw the battlefield as a living chessboard. While many generals got lost in the dust and noise, he kept a cool head, as if he already knew how the story would end. And on that cramped plain of Issus, he drew up a plan worthy of the gods of war. First step, break the enemy line at the precise moment. And to do that, he personally led the cavalry attack on the right. Yes, he led from the front. No theatrics, no after you. Alexander knew that leadership is proven on the front lines, and that inspired almost blind trust among his men. Meanwhile, the center was held up by his phalanx, a solid wall of long spears and tightly aligned shields. It was as if a living fortress was bearing the weight of the Persian Empire, buying the king time to find the weak spot. And he found it. The cavalry didn't charge blindly. Alexander aimed straight at the Persian left flank, where he knew the troops were less experienced and more vulnerable. It wasn't just about brute force, it was about precision. He didn't just want to inflict damage, he wanted to destabilize the entire formation. Like a domino that once tipped, brings down all the others. And that's exactly what began to happen. The Persian Empire, even with its colossal might, started to tremble from within. The secret? Coordination. While Alexander sliced through the flank with his cavalry, the phalanx wouldn't give an inch in the center. It was as if the Macedonians were dancing amidst chaos. Every unit knew what to do, where to attack, when to retreat. Command flowed seamlessly. There was no panic, only synchronization. And in that scenario, the Persian numbers started to look increasingly useless. Darius might have had more men, but Alexander had more brains on the field. And it was precisely under that coordinated pressure, in that storm of spears and horses, that something unexpected happened. The Persian center began to give way, and with it, Darius III himself. The decisive moment. That split second that separates eternal names from the forgotten. When Alexander's cavalry broke through the Persian center, the impact was not only physical, it was psychological. Darius, the great lord of the Persian Empire, saw the wall crumble before his eyes. And what did he do? He turned his back. Literally, he climbed into his war chariot and fled. As the saying goes, he who runs is in a hurry, right? Well, the emperor ran, and ran fast. It was at that very moment that the structure of the Persian army began to collapse. Because look, an army might endure hits, but when its leader flees, he takes with him much more than his mere presence. He drags away morale, confidence, and a sense of purpose. The soldiers looked around and thought, if Darius is running, who are we to stay? And just like that, total chaos. The retreat turned into a rout. Alexander, on the other hand, didn't waste any time. He knew that this was the final blow. He commanded his men with precision, pressing the Persians as if closing a book that had already been read. The pursuit was relentless. The Macedonians were like hungry lions chasing a terrified herd. And all because of a single gesture, the retreat of Darius. A gesture that cost the Persian Empire not just the battle, but a part of its imperial soul. And the most intriguing part, Darius fled, leaving behind not only his soldiers, but his own family, wife, mother, children, all captured by Alexander. That says a lot, not just about cowardice, but about the collapse of an entire system. Because, you see, an empire can fall silently in a miscalculated decision or in a moment of fear. And that moment at Issus was like a stone dropped in a lake. The ripples would spread for a long time, and that's where an unexpected side of Alexander comes in. Because what he did with those prisoners wasn't what most would expect from a bloodthirsty conqueror. On the contrary, and that subtle detail would change the political game in an even deeper way. Now check out this twist worthy of an epic screenplay. After winning at Issus, Alexander finds amidst the ruins of battle something few expected. The entire Persian royal family, there, defenseless, at the mercy of his judgment. Any other king would have used this to humiliate his adversary, but Alexander, he played on a different level. Instead of seeking revenge, he offered respect. Instead of abusing his power, he demonstrated absolute control. That's what it means to dominate. Not only your enemy, but the very narrative. Darius's mother, confused, thought Alexander was Darius when she saw him. So youthful and regal was his bearing. And what did he do? He corrected her gently, treated everyone with dignity, ensured their safety, and maintained the treatment befitting a royal family, as if they were still state figures. This wasn't naive kindness, it was pure calculation. Every gesture of his there built an image, that of a just, magnanimous king above the common impulses of war. This move had a powerful political impact. By preserving Darius's family and treating them with honor, Alexander sent a clear message. I'm not just a conqueror, I'm worthy of ruling the Persian Empire. It was a masterstroke, without even drawing a sword. He didn't need to demolish temples or shout his victory. Simply showing that he knew how to govern better than Darius was enough. And that perception began to spread like wildfire throughout the East. Many leaders and cities that had once feared Alexander began to see him in a different light. After all, if even the emperor's mother and children were safe under his watch, perhaps he was a king worth following. The war wasn't over yet, but Persian confidence was already starting to crack. It was as if Alexander, with an apparently simple gesture, planted a seed of doubt within the ranks of the Persian Empire, and amidst all this, Issus was no longer just a one battle, it was the harbinger of an empire in check, and with Darius retreating, it was up to Alexander to seize this new moment and change the course of history. Some battles last a day, but echo for millennia. Issus was exactly that. The victory there wasn't just over Darius, it was over fear itself, over the impossible. Alexander, still so young, ceased to be merely the king of Macedonia to become the official nightmare of the Persian Empire. After that battle, no one ever dared to say he was just an impulsive adventurer. He had proven, with blood and strategy, that he was playing on a bigger board. While Darius hid, trying to piece together what remained of his authority, the world began to see Alexander with new eyes. He wasn't just an invader. He was the man who faced an army 3 times larger and won with style. He didn't destroy, he transformed, and that is scarier than 1,000 swords, because now Alexander didn't have to conquer everything by brute force. Many would surrender just by his reputation. His fame became his weapon. The Persian Empire, for its part, went into defense mode. Issus wasn't just a defeat, it was a rupture. For the first time, Darius's aura of invincibility had been torn apart in public. And the worst part, it happened on the most visible side of the map. Everyone saw it. Cities began to hesitate in following Persian orders. Local governors, once loyal to Darius's throne, started to reconsider their alliances. An empire, once it starts to crack from within, collapses with a single push. And meanwhile, Alexander pressed on, steady and confident, his eyes already fixed on the next move. He knew that Issus was only the beginning. The war was still very much alive, but now he was the protagonist of the story. Every move he made the world hold its breath. Every new city conquered seemed to confirm what many were already whispering, that perhaps destiny was indeed on the Macedonian side. The future from that point on smelled different, had another name, and that's where the legend begins to grow like wildfire. Because after Issus, Alexander didn't just want more. He began to believe he was invincible. Now tell me, how many times have you felt at a disadvantage? With fewer resources, less support, or simply smaller in the face of a giant challenge? Alexander was there too. But what he did at Issus proves one thing. You don't need to have it all. You just need to know how to use what you have. He defeated an empire with strategy, courage, and a clear vision of where he wanted to go. And that, my friend, applies to far more than ancient warfare. How many battles in your life could be won with less brute force and more strategy? Is what you lack really power, or is it leadership? And if the problem isn't the size of the challenge, but the way you're looking at it, Issus is more than history, it's a mirror. because the true empire to be conquered begins within you. So, are you going to keep running like Darius? Or are you going to act like Alexander? If this story struck a chord with you, if it awakened a new perspective on power, strategy, and overcoming obstacles, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Here, every battle from the past reveals a lesson for your present, and believe me, there's still a lot of history left to transform you.